One of my favorite lines from a book outside of the Bible is seen in The Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life by Donald S. Whitney. And right off the bat, in the beginning of the book, he makes the statement, "Discipline without direction is drudgery." Now, it's some incredible alliteration right there. I think you'll agree. But the idea that he's giving across is really true. Imagine for a moment, if you will, a child trying to learn the violin. He's sitting there and he's practicing for hours and hours. And he has no real end goal in mind. He can't picture what is the direction that he's heading towards. You probably have children and you can picture this in your own mind. They don't want to do it. Now imagine for a moment if we could transport that child playing the violin, practicing, into the future, and he could see himself practicing and playing in front of a massive orchestra, in front of a massive crowd with absolute skill and mastery. If he sees this picture and he sees what he will become, that will give him inspiration to strive for that goal. And it might be less difficult to sit down and play and practice. For you and for me in the Christian life, I think sometimes when God calls us to lay aside sin or to do this spiritual discipline like prayer, reading the Bible, we struggle with it. And I think we struggle with it because we forget what the end goal of the Christian life really is. We could go to a medley of different verses to see what is the end goal for the Christian life, but one of my favorites that I constantly find myself going back to personally is Romans chapter 8, verses 28 to 29. Everyone knows verse 28. It says, "For all things work together for the good of those who love God." Now, everyone knows that verse. It's so popular. But not very many people keep in mind verse 29, where it says, "For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers." You see, the first verse conveys this knowledge that we know that every situation in life is working together for our good. And that is a good thing to keep in mind, that it is good. Every difficult trial, every season of our lives, even just the red light you hit on the way to work, God is going to use that for your good. The trivial things. But what we don't keep in mind is verse 29. When we divorce these two verses, we actually do a great injustice to what God is conveying to us. Not just are these trials and tribulations and trivial matters working for our good, but it's working towards an end goal. And verse 29 tells us that we are predestined to be conformed to the image of Jesus Christ. That is the end goal. That is what we are working towards. God is shaping your character to look more like Jesus. In fact, let's take the analogy of hitting that red light. When you hit that red light, you might get very angry because you know that you're late for work. But maybe God is building patience in you, like Jesus. Or maybe he's creating in you a more disciplined, rigid schedule. That way you can plan better to be on time, like Jesus was never late to be in the Father's will. Whatever the case, we could go on and on. But the point is this: every situation in life is working towards that end goal of us being like Jesus. So I want to encourage you, friend and family. Are you being made into the image of Christ? Is the discipline that God is calling you into, is it absolute drudgery? Maybe it's because you've forgotten that God is making you more like Jesus. I want to encourage you, friend and family. Look to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. He's awaiting at the end goal, and in the end, God will complete that sanctification process and make you like himself. I love you so much, and I hope that you will strive to be like Jesus today.